Everyone to week 4 of our Faith and Finance series. I am joined today by my wonderful wife. Leonette, can you come say hi in our shot for us? So, I got my wife here with me as usual, so she's here, and I'm glad to have her say some things. I'll just say about her. She's massively important to all of the behind-the-scenes stuff that goes into this content. She reviews stuff with me. She takes a lot of time to pray and to worship ahead of time, and so I am truly grateful for her and all the stuff that she does with this. Some things, just some quick housekeeping items. Say hi to us in the comments. Let us know that you are here. Remember, say hi during the stream for people who are reaching out during the stream. Next week, we will be giving away a gift card, and we're doing that based on who has participated during the stream. So we're going to do a drawing off of that. So in addition to my wife and I getting that gift card for you, we're also going to match that in a donation to Community Chapel as well. So we've been honored to be a part of you all's ministry and to be here. So some other things, if this is the first week you're tuning in or if you've missed some weeks, it's very, very important. I'm asking you go back and watch the first messages before you try to jump in here. This week, we're going to get a little bit more tactical with your finances. The prior weeks are Bible-based foundations. So if today is more the walls of your financial house, the last few weeks are your foundations. And it's really, really important that you understand those before you jump in to this week. So go back and watch those first weeks if you have not already. So as we jump in today, I'm going to do a brief review with you. Week 1, what did we talk about? We talked about how our money is a direct reflection of our heart. Where Jesus said, where your treasure is, there may your heart be also. Your spending is a true reflection of your priorities and your values. Your spending is a reflection of your true priorities and your values. And if you want to get an objective evaluation of your heart, look at your receipts. So many times we often believe we're more generous than what we are. We often believe that we're less materialistic than what we are. But the fact of the matter is, if you want a real objective view of it, look at where your money is going. Your receipts reflect your true priorities. We also discussed how money is only a blessing to the extent of your character. That the moment your money is bigger than your ability to handle it, you don't own your money owns you. Week 2. We talked about stewardship and generosity. So as we opened up, the first pinnacle scripture that we opened with is the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. We established that our money, everything that we own is not ours, but it's God's. So we are money managers, not owners. Remember, we are entrusted to our money, not entitled to our money. We also discussed giving within this week. We mentioned 2 Corinthians 9:11, which says, you will be enriched in every way to be generous in every way. So this is the purpose of true wealth. True wealth is in what is given, not in what is kept. So oftentimes we give with the expectation of receiving, but to change our thinking just a little bit, what if we received with the expectation of giving? We acknowledge that generosity is a characteristic of God, and He is the ultimate example of generosity. We follow that example. Remember, when it comes to giving to people and serving in the world, we are to give with the expectation of nothing in return from the people that we are giving to. Remember that a gift with strings attached is not a gift, it is a manipulation. We remember in our giving, we always start with the tithe. And lastly, we have to kill our perspective of finitude, that finite perspective that we all inherently have. We have to get rid of that because scarcity focuses on our finite supply. But we as Christians walk in abundance, and abundance focuses on God's infinite supply. So know that we are also supposed to be good givers in this time. Remember, what you can give up, you have mastered, and what you can't give up has mastered you. And when we are mastered by money, we walk in scarcity. But when we are masters of our money, we walk in abundance. Week 3, I know this is quite a bit of review here. I'm hitting all our main points. Poverty is what we discussed. We discussed what it is, what it looks like, and how we defeat it. We discussed that if we are going to help others in poverty, we need to allow Jesus to heal our own poverty. That, remember, poverty is a condition of the soul, not just material lack, and all poverty is the result of brokenness. Remember, for most of you in financial trouble, the brokenness causing your poverty is you. Maybe that's the brokenness of identity that we discussed, where we are using our money in the hopes of buying the validation of other people. Remember, though, if people can give you validation, people can take it away. Maybe it's that brokenness of fear we discussed. We don't want to trust our money. We want to trust God entirely. We're not going to trust something's ability to harm us because we are trusting God's word to preserve us. Maybe you realize that maybe you've been indifferent or ignorant towards money. And I don't know if you recall, but we discussed the sluggard in Proverbs. If that's something that applies to you, remember this: godly preparation and execution in your finances are critically important. Deliberate ignorance or indifference are not money issues, they're character issues. Remember that. And also, if this is something that you've struggled with, don't be afraid to start, even if it's not perfect. The second step will be easier than your first step. Remember, it's often the start that stops us here. Maybe it's the fourth thing that we discussed, the fourth type of poverty, which is the brokenness of discontentment. Remember, discontentment is the result of trying to establish peace with anything other than the Lord. It is the deficit that exists within everything else. In discontentment, we have to remember our soul is starving for worship and gratitude towards God. Stop telling God what you don't have and thank Him for what He's given. And also, for someone who's in discontentment, begin to give. Giving will enrich your life in a way that you couldn't have possibly fathomed. Remember, true wealth is in what is given, not what is kept. Most importantly, when it comes to poverty, here is the absolute climax of our poverty story. Remember, Jesus is the one who restores you. He is your hero. You can never mend your brokenness, but He can. His grace heals and empowers to overcome poverty. Luke 4:18 says, this is Jesus speaking, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to proclaim good news to the poor." So today, let's jump into today's message. That's our brief review. Before we get too much into today, I want to give you a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you today. You will probably feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. I'm going to be giving you a lot of information here. With this month, I have a lot of content that, if you can't tell, we've had a lot of content that we're trying to get your way. And so I understand there's going to be a lot today. I ask, be willing to take notes and be willing to possibly revisit some of these later. Because again, I'm going to be throwing a lot your way, and I'm going to be throwing it rather quickly as well. So jumping into today. In week 1, if you recall, I discussed something that I referred to as the money ladder. And these are steps that we are to climb as we go about our financial journey. And I said these are somewhat similar to Dave Ramsey's baby steps, pretty similar actually. But I'm going to list those steps for you, and today we're going to look at the first 3 of those. So, step 1, we're going to save $1,000 for a starter emergency fund. More on that later. Step 2, I want you to list all of your debts except your house, and I want you to list them smallest to largest. And I want you to attack the little one. You're going to make minimum payments on the other debts, but you're going to attack that little one, and you're going to knock it out. Then you're going to jump to the next smallest debt, and you're going to attack that one and knock it out. And we're going to pay off all of our debt here except our house. Step 3, I want you to build a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, 3 to 6 months worth of expenses for a fully funded emergency fund. We'll talk about that more today. Some other ones that we're going to discuss, these are our money steps. We're not going to discuss these this week, but number 4 is to save a down payment for a house of at least 20%. If you want to buy a house in cash, wonderful. I'm your biggest cheerleader, and my wife and I have some friends that are currently doing that. If you are doing that, I want you to also do step 5 simultaneously with step 4, where you're saving up for your house. And step 5 is to save 15 to 20% of your income for retirement. And that is going to be in a 401k and or an IRA. So we won't be discussing that much this week. We'll probably look at that some next week. Step 6, pay off your house early. And step 7, live and give generously. So today, I'm going to tell you my agenda today. So this is our outline right here. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to establish a biblical view of debt. Step 2, we're going to look at this money ladder, the first 3 steps, and we're going to apply it, looking at the basics of getting out of debt and being resilient against future debt. And step 3, we're going to discuss the foundations of building a budget. And I'm going to build a mock budget together with you today. So with this, that's our 3 points today. We're going to look at a biblical view of debt. We're going to look at the first 3 steps of the money ladder, and I'm going to talk to you about how to build a budget. So I'm going to start with a biblical view of debt. This is our first thing. And this is how I'm going to open it up. Debt is dangerous. Debt is dangerous. Warren Buffett, he's probably the most successful investor that's ever lived. He has a quote that says, "The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken." And for most Americans, their overspending is this very habit. People spend money they don't have. And at first, it may not hurt too bad. Let's go through a hypothetical situation. Maybe someone gets a little bit of credit card debt. Let's say $250. For most people with $250 of credit card debt, it's not too overwhelming. It doesn't hurt too bad. And this is the attitude most people take. It's not that bad. You know, I can buy stuff now. But a few years later, and multiple buy one, get one sales, this person's $250 debt has somehow climbed to $10,000. And all of a sudden, they have no extra money to pay down those payments. And they're in a situation where they are financially so strapped they can barely breathe. All of a sudden, they have no extra money to put towards payments, again, because their payments have risen to where all of their extra money is going to making minimums. Then one day, maybe this person gets a flat tire on their way to work, and they have absolutely no idea how they're going to pay for it. They have the credit card company calling at all hours of the day, harassing them because they owe the credit card company so much. Because the stress is so hard, this person is having a difficult time falling to sleep at night. Maybe they're staring at the ceiling all while trying to catch their breath because the anxiety is making their heart race so bad. Not only is this hypothetical scenario, not only does this happen, but it's overwhelmingly common. I want to say that again. Not only does this hypothetical scenario happen, but this is overwhelmingly common. Envision this with me right now. Picture your personal street. Picture every single house. Maybe you're driving into your neighborhood and you picture that old Spanish-style home that sits to the right, and that one with the circle drive, or that classic-looking brick house that sits off in the distance. Picture all the houses you can on your street. 8 out of 10 of those homes are barely scraping by financially. 80% of people live paycheck to paycheck in the United States. And oftentimes, maybe that starts with just a little bit of credit card debt. And then maybe they want to upgrade their car around that same time. And if only they had a house with one more bedroom. And then all of a sudden, boom, they're trapped. And this financial tipping point will occur when the depletion of our money through payments exceeds the replenishment of our money through our income. It's this tipping point where our payments will outrun our income. Going on with this, 69% of Americans have less than $1,000 in the bank, and 34% have no savings whatsoever. What I'm getting at with this is people are one missed paycheck away from catastrophe. And this is normal. And normal is miserable. I'm going to say that again. This is normal, and normal is miserable. Normal is buying items you can't afford with money you don't have. Normal is the appearance of wealth with inner poverty, a financial whitewash tomb, so to speak. Let me share you this famous money quote that I love. One pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor and has great wealth. Want to know where that quote came from? That is Proverbs 13, verse 7. So the cycle is to spend money we don't have, and debt comes slowly and pulls us into deeper water. And before long, we can't get our head above that water, and we are desperately gasping for air. So to amend the words of Warren Buffett that I shared up front, the chains of our overspending are too light to be felt until they are too strong to be broken. This is normal, and normal is miserable. So if we've established we don't want to be normal, then let's dream weird. Let's dream weird for a moment. Take a moment to imagine this with me. What would your life look like if you had no payments? Would you even have, maybe, let's say in this situation, you even have some extra money put back for an emergency. What if you had money left over every month after you did your finances? Would you finally be able to pay that tithe check without a bad attitude or without stress? Could you finally go on that date with your spouse without having a money fight afterwards? What would it do for your peace of mind, your generosity? Could you pursue your passions more boldly? Would you be able to take that job that would let you see your family more, even though it doesn't make quite as much money? Would you spend that money to go on a missions trip? Or would you finally be able to take that trip with your friends you've been talking about since you graduated high school? The life that we are describing is one with no debt. The life we are describing is one without debt. Dave Ramsey says, you know what you have when you don't have payments? Money. You have money when you don't have any payments. So this leads me to the question, what is debt? Let's define it. Almost all debt is impatience. That's really the root of most debt. It's buying something before the money is there. Thomas Jefferson said, never spend money before you have it. We've also established debt is normal. The average American has over $6,000 in credit card debt. The average new car payment in 2019 was $557 a month. And in the state of Missouri, where I'm currently teaching this from, the average student loan balance is $33,607. Debt is normal, and debt is dangerous. So, as you can tell, as I've started this lesson today, I've primarily been appealing to you practically. Now let me show you biblically. I'm going to go to Proverbs 6, verse 1 here. My son, if you have put up security for your neighbor, have given your pledge for a stranger, if you are snared but in the words of your mouth, caught up in the words of your mouth. So this is talking about someone, if you are in debt here, then do this. Save yourself, for you have come into the hand of your neighbor. Go, hasten, and plead urgently with your neighbor. Give your eyes no sleep, and your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the hand of the fowler. Look at the urgency here. Save yourself. Let me give you some more scriptures. I like to make sure that we have an abundance of biblical foundation to return to. Proverbs 22:7. The borrower is slave to the lender. Here's a rather unfortunate, but I think true money quote that goes along with this. I heard this. It said, the only man who sticks closer to a brother in adversity is a creditor. I'm like, wow, that's a tough quote. Let's go on with this. Proverbs 22:26 through 27. Be not the one of those who gives pledges, who puts up security for debts. So we're talking about debt here. If you have nothing in which to pay, why should your bed be taken from underneath of you? Last one. This one's my favorite. Romans 13:8. Owe no man anything but to love one another. So to reiterate, debt is dangerous. The Bible, although it never calls debt a sin, it never speaks highly of it. Debt is always used in a negative connotation. This is very countercultural. Let me define how culture will talk about debt. So many people today will actually encourage you to take out debt. Take out that loan and grow your business. Make that mortgage a 30-year instead of a 15. The payments will be cheaper. Go to college and enjoy the experience. You can figure out how to pay for it later. 0% interest for 18 months. Or debt is great, it helps you build credit. These are common things that culture will tell you concerning debt. But when it comes to debt, we have to decide right now, we will not be cultural, we will be biblical. I'm going to say that again. When it comes to debt, we have to decide right now, we will not be cultural, we will be biblical. Here's the ultimate money issue. Our money is God's. Remember, we established that in week 2. Our money is God's, and we are entrusted with our money, not entitled to our money. Second thing, we also discussed how God is not a fan of debt. He said to get out of it like your life depends on it. Remember that gazelle we talked about? Escape, free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter. So, with that being said, if our money belongs to the Lord and His wishes are against debt, then indifference towards debt is bad stewardship. I'm going to say that again. If our money belongs to the Lord and His wishes are against debt, then indifference to debt is bad stewardship. Your credit cards, your car loan, your student loan, your home loan, they're big deals to the Lord. If it's God's money, then we are required to follow God's priorities. God said to get out of debt like your life depends on it. Listen to that urgency again in Proverbs chapter 6. You can tell I'm really repeating this one a lot because I'm trying to emphasize the importance here. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of a hunter. Have you ever seen a gazelle get chased by a cheetah? I remember growing up, we watched National Geographic in our house a lot, and we would see these nature shows where a cheetah is chasing a gazelle. This is how we are supposed to run when we are in debt. This is the intensity we are supposed to bring. If a cheetah is chasing you, you should not be walking. We don't frolic when we're about to get eaten. We run for our lives, just like a gazelle that is getting chased by a cheetah. This is the intensity that our debt-free journey needs to have. If it's God's money, we are required to follow God's priorities. Remember, we are entrusted to our money, not entitled to our money. So now that we have established debt biblically, let me just feed this practically to you. Your credit cards, again, are a big deal to God. Your car loan, your student loan, your home loan, they are big deals to the Lord because it is God's money. We want to honor the Lord as good stewards of our money. It's time to kill our debt. Because the Lord desires we owe no man anything but to love one another. When the Lord doesn't like debt, and it is His money, for us to take that lightly is disobedience. So we've established, number one, what is a biblical view of debt? The second thing I want to do, I want to look at the first 3 money steps that we talked about today. And these first 3 steps exist to eliminate debt and make you more resilient against debt going forward. I'm going to walk through these in detail with you now. Step 1 on your financial ladder, I want you to get $1,000 saved up for a baseline emergency. And I want you, while you're doing this, I want you to make minimum payments on all of your other debts. So make minimum payments, and I want you to scrounge up $1,000 as quickly as you can. And I can tell you, you can do this easier than what you think. Clean out your garage or your attic and put that junk on eBay or Craigslist. Pull some extra shifts at work. You can make this happen. This $1,000 emergency fund is a very small layer of protection, but it protects you from some very large vulnerabilities. Now, why this? Well, now let's play this out a little bit. Let's hypothetically say that you are someone who has no emergency fund whatsoever. If this is you, you are one inconvenience away from absolute catastrophe. For people in this situation, they likely have poor credit, they likely have maxed out credit cards, and no other means of handling a basic emergency. Now let's say this person is driving to work one day and their car breaks down and it's a $700 repair. This person has to figure out how to fix their vehicle. If they can't fix their vehicle, they can't go to work. If they can't go to work, they can't earn an income. So it is absolutely important, for the sake of them keeping their job, it is paramount that they fix this $700 car repair. So for most people in this situation, what they would have to do is they would have to go down to their local payday lender, and they would sign up for a payday loan, and the average payday loan, or I shouldn't say the average, but most of these can get to absurdly high interest rates. So let's do a hypothetical, a very common interest rate of 490% APR, annual percentage rate. And they will disguise this by saying, oh, well, your next paycheck, you'll pay us back your loan plus 15% interest. If you run this on a yearly basis, it's 490% interest to cover that one expense. Some of these have actually been known to get up to as high as 1,500% interest. So this person who has this $700 car repair is much worse off than they were before. All of a sudden, that $700 is accruing $105 every 2 weeks in interest. At this step in one's financial journey, they are very vulnerable. Like seriously, and I'm going to use some strong words here, some nasty, oppressive, scum of the earth, predatory lenders prey on desperate people who have no money. And I can't say that more emphatically. They prey on people in this position. And these predatory loans that prey on people here, in my opinion, they should be illegal with how horrible and horrendously binding that they are. This $1,000 really exists to protect you from these people that are trying to prey on you. So remember that $700 car repair that I hypothetically gave you. What if someone neglected to pay that for an entire year? Let's say that payday lender didn't come repossess their car or do something along those lines. Let's just say that somehow they were unable to pay it and the payday lender didn't do anything about it. Within a year, that $700 would have grown to over $4,000 in principal that they had to pay off. If this person had actually taken that, remember I said some of these payday loans can even be as high as 1,500% interest. What if this person the $700 would have been on a 1,500% interest payday loan? It would have taken over 11 grand to eliminate that loan had they waited a year to pay on it. So get your $1,000 saved up so you don't have to mess with these sharks that prey on people in these positions. When it comes to loan sharks, this $1,000 is your shark cage. The only exception that I would give to getting this $1,000 saved up, if you currently have a debt that exceeds 30% in interest, I want you to go ahead and get rid of that debt. And the reason I say that is if you have a debt that's higher than 30%, you're probably already involved with one of these loan sharks. So get rid of that debt and then save up that $1,000. But for everyone else, I want you to get this $1,000 together and I want you to run as fast as you can to the second step that we're going to talk about. I want you to list your debts, except your house. We're going to list our debts smallest to largest, and we're going to attack the smallest debt first while paying minimum payments on the other debts. Once that smallest one is paid off, we're going to move to the next smallest one, and we're going to move to the next smallest one, and I want you to attack them in that order. And be aware, this can take a few years, but it's worth it. So some people who are watching may be wondering, well, Ryan, why wouldn't you do it based on interest rate first? Dave Ramsey has a funny response to this. He says, well, if we were doing math, we wouldn't have credit card debt. So we have to do this in a way that is sustainable and works with our behavior and psychology. The reason we say do it smallest to largest is we want you to have those victories along the way. If you went to the gym and it took you 3 years to see any result whatsoever, and let's say after 3 years, boom, you looked great. But in the process, you didn't feel good and you didn't see any improvements. Would you still go to the gym? Would you stay with it for 3 years? Most of us would not. However, when we see incremental progress, that motivates us to keep going and to get even more intense. And that is the purpose of doing our money in this stage. So remember, in this time, we are running like a gazelle that is fleeing for its life. Remember that. Give your eyes no sleep, give your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the hand of the fowler. Dave Ramsey will say during this step, he says, don't step foot in a restaurant unless you're eating there, sell so much stuff that the kids think they're next, and put the cat on eBay. I'm obviously being a little bit humorous when I say these things, but I think you can get my real point that I'm trying to make. We are running like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter. Run like a cheetah is chasing you. Sell unused furniture, put the kids' unused toys on Craigslist, take your old clothes to Plato's Closet or sell them on Facebook Marketplace. If your income is low, get a second job. This is the hardest stage, but it is the one that is the most important. This stage takes the most sacrifice, but most importantly, it takes the most change in you. Your lifestyle, your values towards money, all will change within this stage, but remember, it's worth it. This is what God is calling you to do. Some things that I want you to consider if you're in this step here. I want you to first consider the cost of your cars. If the value of your cars, and this is toys included, so I'm talking about RVs, boats, four-wheelers, if this exceeds half of your annual household income, you really need to downsize. And even I think half is a pretty generous figure when you actually look at it. Personally, my wife and I, we probably aim for more around that 20 to 25%. That's just on our end. But these things, having all of these toys and vehicles, are very expensive to maintain. And if they exceed more than half of your income, they are owning you at this point. So another thing here when it comes to cars, don't buy a brand new car unless you are a millionaire. That's just a general rule that I have. A new car will be worth about a third of what you paid for it within 4 years. So if you spend $40,000 on a car, you really can't afford for the value of that car to drop down to $13,000 after 4 years. That's a $27,000 loss. That is a huge hit. You really should not be in that situation. Most people, we can't afford to lose $27,000 over the course of 4 years. That's why I'm saying, unless you're a millionaire, I want you to buy your cars used, and I want you to buy them in cash. I want you to save up and buy a car in cash. That is our goal here. The second thing, if your rent or your house payment exceeds more than 1/4 of your monthly take-home pay, then you are what is called house poor. You really need to downsize in this situation. And do not listen to lenders here. They will tell you that you can afford much more house than that. If you go to a bank and you ask for a loan, they will approve you for a loan nearly double what I am putting forth here as a guideline. Don't listen to this. Also, if you own a house, when I say your house payment here, I am referring to a house payment on a 15-year fixed rate mortgage, and it should not exceed 1/4 of your take-home pay. And I also, within that figure, want you to calculate your homeowner's insurance and your property taxes within that 1/4 figure. The only exceptions that I could do for something like this is if somebody lived in an ultra high cost of living city. So if somebody happened to be watching this from Los Angeles, I could bump that 1/4 in this situation up to 1/3, but no more than that. For nearly 99% of the population, nearly the entirety of people listening to this, it's 1/4 your take-home pay, and if it's a mortgage on a 15-year note. The third thing when it comes to getting out of debt, I want you to set in your heart right now that you will not borrow money again. You need to have an I've had it moment where you tell yourself, I work way too hard to be this broke. I'm tired of losing sleep. I'm tired of having disagreements in my marriage. You have to get intense with this. You need to get an I'm done with debt moment. Get frustrated at that debt. Get passionate. The fourth thing here, remember at this point in time, you are sprinting. Depending on your debt situation, you may be here for 3 months, you may be here for 3 years. But remember, this is probably the hardest step, but it's the most important. Remember, it's often the start that stops us, so do it. Stay with it. You can do this. And the fifth thing here, always pay your tithe. I don't want you to get so intense with debt or with paying off debt that you forget to give that tithe, return that tithe to the Lord. We need to sow discipline in the natural world with blessing coming in the spiritual world. Tithe invites God's blessing into your finances. You want the Lord at the center of your finances. And we want to make sure we always honor the Lord with the tithe. Step number 3, we're going to build an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. This protects you from a major financial emergency. Maybe it's a job loss, maybe it's an accident or a medical emergency or an HVAC that goes out or your roof needs replaced, you didn't realize it and it snuck up on you. Statistically speaking, there's a 75% chance that you will undergo a major financial event in the next decade. 75% chance. This emergency fund exists as a means of insurance against future debt. This emergency fund exists as insurance against future debt. This is insurance, not a fun trip came up with my friends and I wanted to take it fund. This is not a I really wanted that boat fund. This is for emergencies. I personally like to clarify this informally by saying it's for life's throat punches, not for life's luxuries. It's for life's throat punches, not for life's luxuries. And when it comes to this emergency fund, you will be surprised how this changes your circumstances. Dave Ramsey says an emergency fund will turn a crisis into an inconvenience. It will turn a crisis into an inconvenience. So, how do we know if an expense is an emergency? I'm going to give you 3 quick rules here. Emergencies are unexpected, they are necessary, and they are urgent. They're unexpected, necessary, and urgent. So if it answers all 3 of those, if it's a yes to all of those, then you likely have an emergency. When it comes to this emergency fund, I want you to keep it in either a separate checking account or a money market account with your bank. Now, I understand you're not going to be earning a lot of interest here, if anything at all, honestly, right now in today's world. But remember, this is not an investment. This is insurance. So in addition to this being exceedingly practical, this is biblical. Let me show you this if you don't believe me. Proverbs 15:6, in the house of the righteous there is much treasure, but trouble befalls the income of the wicked. Proverbs 21:20, precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. So very clearly, let's restate that. Proverbs indicates that the house of the wise and righteous has stored wealth, and that trouble can befall you if this is not the case. So we have to get going on these steps. We are using biblical principles, and we are recognizing that debt is dangerous, and we are called to be free from that. So these first three steps exist to eliminate debt and make you resilient against taking future debt. So you may be asking, how do we go about this? This leads me to our third thing I want to discuss with you today. We need to build a budget. What does Jesus say about building a budget? Luke 8:28 through 30. For which of you intending to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it, lest after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish it, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. So what is a budget? A budget is your success plan in stewardship. I'm going to say that again. A budget is your success plan in stewardship. To plan a cost is to ensure success. We don't want to get halfway through our month only to find out we ran out of money. Just like this person in what Jesus was saying built half of a tower. We don't want to build half of a month. We don't want our money to go to Chipotle while forgetting to pay our tithe. I have a mild Chipotle addiction, so that was for me. A budget is a success plan in stewardship. So before we build our budget, I want you to pray, and I want you to ask the Lord first and foremost for guidance, because it's His money. Remember that. If you are married, this is a 3-person process. The Lord, your spouse, and you. The Lord, your spouse, and you. So how does a budget work? Simply speaking, you tell a budget what to do, and then your budget tells you what to do. If your friends are going to Florida and they invite you, your budget answers yes or no. If your family invites you to Pizza Hut, you need to ask your budget first. So you tell your budget what to do, and then it tells you what to do. So I'm going to give you 2 ways to budget here. These are just 2 methods, and then I'm going to actually build a budget with you. So the first method is what is called the envelope system. If you're new to budgeting, this is probably the easiest one. You basically will get multiple envelopes, and you will fill them with cash based on predetermined amounts. So if you plan to spend $500 a month on groceries, you're going to put $500 cash into an envelope labeled, you guessed it, groceries. So you would have one for each category within your budget. You would have one for bills, for eating out, for entertainment, for utilities, for phone, for rent. And once you see an empty envelope, you know you have spent all of your money that you had allocated to that. So if, for example, you happen to spend all of your grocery money and you needed to go to the store, you would have to dip into another envelope to cover that cost of groceries. So maybe you would pull that from your eating out fund, and you would use that to go buy your groceries. I have a good friend. He does something very similar to this. He set up multiple bank accounts with his bank, and he transfers money to each of those accounts, and he knows based on when that account hits 0 that he spent that category for the month. So it's a way of breaking your money into certain categories, and once that amount hits 0, you know you've spent your money. The second thing you can do is you can use an online app. There are some tremendous apps that exist to help you track your money. Mint, you need a budget. There's another app, or there's some other apps called Personal Capital and Every Dollar. I personally use Mint, and you need a budget. Basically, these apps will load your transactions, and depending on the app, Mint will try to intuitively categorize your spending. You need a budget. You have to categorize it. But you have to categorize these transactions. So if I spent money at McDonald's, it would show me I had a $13 McDonald's charge. And then it would ask me to put that into a category. So I would have to move that to eating out, for example. My favorite of these that I've mentioned is probably YNAB. You need a budget is what it means. It's called. It goes by YNAB sometimes. But I think this is probably the most effective one for building a budget. It does cost about $6 a month, I believe, but it is probably going to help you be the most disciplined with it. So apps are more convenient than envelopes. The first method that we talked about, apps are going to be more convenient, but they are going to take more discipline because you have to really be aware of what your balance is because they don't stop you from overspending like an envelope system does. So for my wife and I personally, we actually do an upgraded version of the second one. I wasn't quite happy with how the apps worked, so my job requires me to live in Microsoft Excel all the time. So I actually built an Excel program that tracks our spending for us. So I add our transactions in, and this program allows me to manually and more flexibly chart out and trend our spending. So the main purpose of this is to track where your money is going and tell it where to go. If you're really savvy in Excel, feel free to make something for yourself. It works really well. My wife and I enjoy that. So before we build a budget, there's some expectations that we need to set up front. The first of which, getting your budget dialed in takes several months. You will probably have to adjust your budget along the way, very, very likely. But don't give up. It's okay. It takes practice. Second, check your budget at least twice a week. Don't go a few weeks only to find out that you've absolutely blown up your budget. It's easier to take 10 minutes 2 times a week to make sure that you're on track and to know exactly where you're sitting. The third thing, and I'm just going to give you a big principle here, budgets are not a difficulty issue, they are a discipline issue. Budgets are not a difficulty issue, they are a discipline issue. Remember the sluggard that we talked about last week. We want to live our life with discipline. Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. So a budget, I will tell you, a budget is not near as hard as a life without one. Number 4, I'm going to actually introduce this point with a story that I want you to realize about budgeting. Last year, my wife and I, for our 1-year anniversary, we went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And we were so excited to celebrate our anniversary, and we got to do a lot of amazing things. We went ziplining, we went mini golfing, horseback riding. We did so much stuff. On the night of our anniversary, we went to a really nice steakhouse. And I can remember when we got the tab, it was about $130. But because we had budgeted that ahead of time, I wasn't stressed out when I got that $130 receipt. Let me tell you why that is. A budget doesn't take your freedom. A budget gives you freedom. Rachel Cruz, Dave Ramsey's daughter, I'm quoting her when I say that. A budget doesn't take your freedom. A budget gives you freedom. I didn't have to stress about an expensive dinner that night because we planned for it. Had I not known how much money we really had to spend for dinner, I doubt my dinner would have tasted quite so good. So remember, a budget doesn't take your freedom. A budget gives you freedom. Step 5, remember budgeting is a continual process and you need to be flexible with it. You have to be willing to move where the Lord calls you to move. Your budget from month to month is going to be very unique. And maybe spontaneously in the middle of a month, the Lord will tell you, you need to give an offering right now, or you need to help this friend who's in desperate trouble. Be open. Be in regular prayer with your money. Allow your budget to change with the Lord's direction. So let's build a hypothetical budget together. I want to give you exact percentages. You can tweak these to your own individual needs. So I'm giving you some strong, I'm going to say strong suggestions here for things that you need to be looking at within your budget. I'm going to be doing this on someone who makes $4,000 a month. This is roughly a $60,000 a year income. I'm going to be looking at $4,000 a month. What do you do with that money? And along the way, as we go through these different categories that we're going to break this down into, I'm going to give you some quick savings hacks along the way. So the first thing that we are going to do with our budget is we are going to pay our tithe. And this is 10% non-negotiable, pay our tithe, period. In this case of $4,000, that is $400 that we are putting towards the tithe. On a $4,000 income, we're putting $400 towards the tithe. Now, pray for you personally and your budget. My wife and I, we personally feel like we are called to give beyond the tithe. And anything beyond the tithe is called an offering biblically. So my wife and I, we budget for offerings in addition to our tithe. Be flexible and move your, if you need to move your percentages up, follow the Lord in that. He may lead you to do that very thing. The second thing within your money is I want you to put no more than 25% of your take-home pay towards your housing or rent. So again, if this is a mortgage, you need to factor in taxes and homeowner's insurance as well. So in this situation, no more than $1,000. I would love, honestly, if you aimed lower here. Most people spend a lot on homes. I can tell you the less you spend on homes and transportation, the more that adds up over time. The third thing, transportation expenses. This no more than 10% of what your take-home pay is. So in this case, this is gas, this is vehicle insurance, this is taxes on your vehicle. If you notice, I did not apply a car payment here. I'll talk more on that in a bit. That will be classified as a debt. We're not going to classify that as an ongoing expense. That is a debt, and we're going to attack that quickly. And I'm going to discuss that more. So this is not a long-term expense. We're not looking at a car payment like a long-term expense here. So some quick cost savings hacks here. I said I'd throw in some of these along the way. Shop your car insurance around every year. Auto insurance companies increase their rates on you over time, and they always give their best rates to their newest customers. So if you continually are a new customer because you're not married to one insurance company, you jump around a lot, you're going to get the cheapest offer. Car insurance, for whatever reason, is one of the few industries that loyalty is actually punished. So shop your car insurance around, change it up. The fourth category within our budget, food, roughly 10 to 15% of your income. And I'm going to put a rough $600 cap on that a month, whichever is least here. You can adjust that $600 cap within reason. I will say if you have 7 children, $600 is way too low. But if it's just 1 or 2 people, aim for that $600, no more than that $600, okay? And the reason I'm doing that is, for this person making $60,000 a year, 15% of that would be about $600 a month. That's looking at 15% of take home here. So $600 a month. Now, if they made $40,000 a month instead of $4,000 a month, that would be a $6,000 cap. That's why, or $6,000 if you were looking at the ratio. So I think that's absurdly high, and I don't know a single person that could eat $6,000 a month in food. So that's why I'm giving just a rough cap on this. So some quick hacks for making your food budget cheaper. Make your grocery list while looking at your pantry. Make your grocery list while looking at your pantry. Stores are arranged and laid out in a way that makes you spend more money. You ever wonder why your staples are at the back of the store? Why you have to walk through aisles upon aisles of boxes and colorful advertising just to get your milk and eggs? It is because they are set up to incentivize you to spend more money. So don't let advertising define your grocery list. Let your pantry define your grocery list. Also, consider using curbside pickups and online ordering. This can mitigate that overspending because you're not having to see so much stuff. And for more savings, consider buying generic brands of food. Another hack, try to make sure you're not throwing food away. If you're throwing food away, it means you're cooking too much or you're forgetting about leftovers. That's easy cost savings on food. So again, when we're looking at groceries here, 10 to 15% of our income, in this case, in this budget, we're looking at about $600 we're going to allocate towards food. The fifth thing here, utilities. So utilities should be about 10% of your income. This is your gas, electric, water, trash, sewer, things like that. So some quick hacks here to save money on your utility bills: buy LED bulbs for your house. They're cheaper. They are cheaper to light as far as keeping the lights on. They last longer. Personally, I like the color of them better. But incandescent bulbs, they run really hot. They waste a lot of energy. So use LED bulbs here. Also, turn your hot water heater down. A lot of people run their hot water heater at absolute max. You risk, number one, scalding yourself, and it's very expensive to run it that way. So if you're not taking long, drawn-out baths, you're just taking normal showers, then turn that hot water heater down. My wife and I keep ours at about 120 degrees, and it is more than sufficient for what we need. And it saves a very significant amount of your money. Another thing, check your insulation in your attic. They say 70% of your utility bill goes through your ceiling. So make sure your attic is well insulated. This is one you can do yourself as a DIY. I recommend watching a thorough amount of YouTube. This is one that I had done before my wife and I were married, but I had done when I was living in the house by myself, and it knocked about $100 a month off my utility bill. And now after my wife and I got married and we moved in together after that, we live in a much cheaper budget on our utilities because of that. So it saved me about $100 a month, cost me $800 to do, so it paid itself off within 8 months, and now we save $100 a month at least as a result of that. So some other things that you can do to save money: shop your cell phone coverage around. My wife and I and her mom are in the process of doing that ourselves. We're looking at a new plan together as a family. Some other things: get rid of cable. The average cable bill is $106 a month. So it will save you over $1,200 a year if you cut your cable. Streaming services are cheaper and they have way less commercials. So that's my personal opinion there. So utilities should be about 10% of our budget, about $400 here on this budget we are making. So if you are currently in debt, this is a rough example of how your budget should look. You may add up those percentages that I just gave you, and you may realize, Ryan, that's only 70% of the take-home pay here. What do you do with the rest? The remaining 30% I want you to kill your debt with. Remember we talked about what do you do if you have a car loan. This is where you're throwing extra money at the car loan, at credit cards, at student loans, stuff like that. Remember, debt is an emergency. You need to clean up your mess before you use your money to play. Clean up your mess before you budget play money. Also, make sure you have saved up a 3 to 6 month emergency fund before you get into a bunch of play money here as well. So 3 to 6 months worth of expenses here. So if you have paid up all your debt and you have a fully funded emergency fund, here's what you are going to do with your money going forward. Entertainment and play money, about 10% of your income. So $400 in this case. And something you can add here is a little bit of discretionary money. So my wife and I, we both budget about $100 a piece for each of us that we can spend on whatever we want a month. So if my wife finds a romper in shoes that she wants to buy, she can do that. Often for me, I find that sometimes when I'm at work, I'm getting better at this, but I sometimes want to go get a really juicy cheeseburger for lunch, and I want to eat out for lunch. So that's where some of my discretionary money tends to fall. But we can do that. We budget that a piece. She doesn't have to talk to me about spending her $100, and I don't have to talk to her about spending mine. That's something we budget. It comes from both of our accounts, we share an account. It's both of our money, and we both do that together. So budget some entertainment and play money if you have your emergency fund and your debt paid off. So up to 10% of your take-home pay here. Budget in a little bit of unexpected, 5%. So this is going to be car and home repairs. In this case, it would be about $200. I will tell you, these often come in waves. So you may be fine for 2 years, and then all of a sudden your HVAC goes out. Make sure you're putting that $200 back regardless, even if you spent it or not. Or whether you spent it or not, make sure you're putting that money back. So keep that $200 going in there because they often do come in waves, it seems like. And then the last thing, I want you to invest 15% of your money. So in this case, it would be about $600 towards retirement. And we'll probably look at that more in next week's lesson. So this is a rough budget. If you notice, if you counted up these percentages along the way, we reached 100%. And that's what you want to do. I hope as you build your budget and you get more experienced with it, as you get pay increases and promotions, look at adjusting your giving and adjusting your investing upwards. That is our goal. I want you to give more and I want you to invest more. So, wow, we have talked about a lot of stuff today. I'm going to conclude with you now. So, what did we do today? We established, number one, a biblical view of debt. Number two, I gave you the money ladder and a step-by-step approach of getting out of debt and staying resilient against future debt. And number three, we discussed the basics of building a budget, and we built a hypothetical budget together. So, conclusions for today. Debt is normal, but debt is also miserable. Craig Rochelle says, if you want what other people have, then do what other people do. But if you want what other people don't have, you must be willing to do what others won't do. So debt is dangerous. It's not God's plan for you. It's time to get intense, like your life depends on it. Remember that gazelle. Let's evict debt from our lives. Remember, our money is God's. And when the Lord doesn't like debt, and it's His money, to take debt lightly is disobedience. We want to free ourselves from debt so we are free to serve God entirely with our money. Don't indenture yourself to someone else, but free yourself so you can live and give for the Lord. Craig Rochelle says, discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. So let's get serious with this. Work your money ladder. Remember, step 1, get that $1,000 saved up as a baseline emergency fund. Step 2, list your debts, accept your house, smallest to largest. Attack the smallest one first. Move to the second smallest one, and so on. Step 3, get a 3 to 6 month emergency fund saved up. Remember, this is insurance. This is not an investment. And lastly, make sure you build and live on a budget. Your budget is your success plan and stewardship. You tell your budget what to do, then it tells you what to do. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm honored to have been with you all today. We have several minutes left here for questions. Do we have any questions or comments within our feed this morning, Leonette?
Not at the moment. Karen Swade used Mint.
Swade and Kara said that they use Mint themselves, so I know they've said that they really enjoyed that and it works really well for them. So I'm glad about that. Anybody else, if you have any questions or comments, let us know. Another disclaimer, if you're listening to this, if you need additional help, message my wife on Facebook. Her name is Leonette Ferguson, L-E-A, capital A, N-N-E-T-T-E, Leonette Ferguson. Shoot her a message and we can try to get with you personally. The reason not me is I am very inactive on Facebook, so it could be weeks or months before I see it. So with that, message my wife if you have something that's deeply personal or something, maybe you need more tailored help, we would love to help you out. So if that means really helping you to build your budget, looking at your situation, if you feel totally overwhelmed with this stuff, you don't have to do this by yourself. We would be glad to coach you and help you with this. Do we have any other questions or comments today, Leonette? Has anything came in?
Cindy said another fantastic lesson again.
Oh, great. Thank you, Cindy. We appreciate that. Appreciate that a lot.
My mom said that was awesome.
Good
no
deal.
Questions, it looks like, yet.
No questions yet. All right. All right. Well, I want to end this one today. I want to say a quick prayer for you all. I want to pray for your financial situation. I want to pray for your budget. And I want to pray that the Lord gives you wisdom and direction. You can see today we got a lot more tactical than we have in the past. Remember, if today is our walls to our financial house, the last few weeks are our foundation. So I want you to make sure that you understand those before you look at these things today. I want to pray with you all today. Pray for your money and your budget and your debt. Lord, thank you so much for this lesson. Thank you, Lord, for this time we've got to spend together. Even though we may be miles apart, Lord, we're grateful we get to do this today through the stream. I pray, Lord, that today, Lord, you would encourage people and give them discipline with their debt, Lord. Help them to be good stewards of what you have called them and entrusted them with, Lord. And I pray, Lord, that you would encourage them and give them the intensity and the guidance and the conviction to see this through, Lord. God, there is a wonderful life that you have for people, a life of generosity and adventure, Lord, and it starts with getting out of debt. So, Lord, I pray today, God, that you show people and you convict, Lord, and you empower people, Lord. I pray that you supernaturally insert your blessing and your life into people's finances, Lord, that, God, they would steward what you have given them according to your principles, Lord. We are honored. We thank you so much, Lord. It's in Jesus' name. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you all next week.